the good news is that even if the CEO took full credit, quote unquote, for your work, you're already in the C-suite. You have that seat, that voice at the table. So whoever takes the credit, it doesn't necessarily matter as much as it did when you were climbing the ladder and nobody cared about you.
Welcome to Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and I teach you how to get promoted, get paid, and bring your whole self to the leadership table. I am on a mission to change organizations from the C-suite out because women are the new face of leadership, and we are doing it on our terms.
Hello, corporate badasses. Welcome to another episode of Women Changing Leadership. I am your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. Today's episode is really aimed towards those women who have already made it to the executive suite, who already have that seat at the table, and yet they're still overworking, overperforming, underfulfilled, and don't feel like they're able to make the impact that they want to be making. Like, as in, shouldn't it all be better? I've been working for this my entire career, and it doesn't feel like I have landed or that I am being successful. If you're listening to today's episode and you're not actually in the C-suite, good for you. You can continue listening because I want you to begin thinking about some of these possibilities early on. Now, I have a lot of women that I work with that are inside of my leadership table mastermind that are actually at the senior director level, and they are doing exactly what I'm going to be talking about in today's episode. And the good news is that if you can actually be in a senior director or a VP level position and you feel like you are compensated at the right level, if you are being included in conversations, it can actually almost be better for you because you don't have all that extra pressure to perform, right? You still have a boss, and that can be incredibly freeing. The problem is that a lot of women operating at the senior director or VP level are operating, waiting for their boss, not actually feeling like they're making an impact, not actually included in the conversation. And so then they feel very frustrated. Maybe they're not even compensated properly for the role that they're in because they're operating one or two levels above. Let me give you an example of what that might look like. So if you're a VP reporting directly into the CEO, you are the number one decision maker. But if you're not being included in the boardroom meetings, if you're not actually in the C-suite or the executive team meetings, you're being left out of the loop. This makes your job even harder. So now you're kind of stuck at this VP level role, not able to make the impact that you want to be making, yet you have the highest level title in your particular division. So this is a problem. This is why I continuously help women, even if they're already at the top, the possible top at their organization, to continue to strive to be higher and higher because it matters that you're actually in the room, okay? Now, for those of you who are in the room, like you could totally be a VP and be in the room, be included in the room. There are a couple of key frustrations that come up for my clients who are already in the C-suite. And so I wanted to share with you some of the tactics and the things that I'm working with my clients on who are actually in the C-suite so that you can see some of those examples and, kind of prepare yourself now as well as become that executive ahead of time so that you can begin to set yourself up for future success. So all of this episode is available to you no matter what level you're at, and I hope that it inspires you to see what's possible for you on the other side. Now, as I'm talking about seeing what is possible for you on the other side, I think it can be incredibly frustrating for my clients who finally make it to the C-suite, who finally get that seat at the table, and yet things suck even worse than what they experienced before. And I think the reason why it stinks so bad is because they realize that they're basically emotionally babysitting their C-suite. It could be their CEO, it could be their peers. They realize that the people at the top are not nearly as competent, or they don't idolize them anymore. They don't strive to be like them. And so they're sort of like, oh gosh, where do I go from here? And so I want to talk to you about where you can go from here, how you can continue to create that freedom for yourself, even in the C suite, so that you can set yourself up for, what we really want, which is one, to be able to make the impact, but then to also like love our lives, to love our careers, to feel like we have the freedom to be with our families or whatever other priorities we have. If we want to travel the world, if we want to make sure that we're taking advantage of everything that we've learned throughout our career and turning it into a book or a podcast or mentoring other women to lift up their careers, whatever that might be for you, you have to have a level of freedom to be able to actually do that. So you could be in the C-suite and like pulling your hair out and super frustrated. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about today is organizational structure. A lot of your career has been spent on team building. So you might have been building out your team. You have to hire the right people. You have to motivate the people. Maybe perhaps up until this point in your career, you had a lot of individual contributors. And then you start managing leaders, and then you're still kind of dealing with the same things like how do you motivate them? How do you pull yourself out of the weeds? How do you begin to make sure that your team is delivering at the level that they're supposed to be delivering? Because you're the end, you're the main person in charge, and you are responsible for your team as well as delivering to executive leadership what you have promised. It's really important to realize that, that's kind of part of the deal. But the problem is that once you get to that C-suite level, you can't approach your team in the same way that you used to be able to approach them and get away with it. Again, I recommend that you start thinking this way, whether you're a senior director or VP. You might not be able to act on everything I'm about to share, but start thinking about it, because if you're treating your team like a fix-it project, then you're going to run into problems. I talk to male executive leaders, and I say male executive leaders because they're much more open and candid with this like hire slow and fire fast mentality. And they're much more open about it whenever I have conversations with them. Like what got them success is being able to turn around a team or get rid of a team or restructure a team. But there's something about this process that allows you to be successful in the C-suite. So a lot of women will look at their team members as fix-it projects, right? Like maybe perhaps you hired them because you really believed in them and you thought they could deliver. Or maybe you have a really problematic employee that has been at the organization for 20 years and the executive team is not getting rid of them and they suck and they're causing lots of problems and they have a lot of pull and credibility because they've been at the organization a long time. Now, this is an actual conversation that I had this last week. So these are real things and problems that you can feel like you have at the C-suite. But if you're approaching this person as the savior. So one of the things that'll come up a lot is like, I need them. I'm newer to this organization than they are. And so I need their knowledge. I need their capability. Yet they're causing such an incredible headache for your organization, for your team, for whatever you're trying to accomplish, that you honestly can't get anything done. So once you get to that C-suite level, instead of thinking of team building as like a fix-it project, I want you to think about it as constant reorgs. I want you to look at the structure of your team, like actually map out org charts, map out dream org charts. Don't put people's names in there, actual people that you have or even resources that you have. Start mapping out the org charts and thinking about, okay, if I could create a dream team, this is what it would look like. And really, like, you are smart enough to do this right now, even at that senior director or VP level. The thing is that you have to look and map out this org chart and then kind of just not tell anybody about it yet. Right? Until the right opportunities come up. If you're in those lower levels, if you're in the C-suite, you are having these conversations about your dream org chart all the time. You're not looking at it as like one problem employee, that specific person. Now, I know it can feel like, oh, I'm taking the humanity out of leadership, but the truth is you work for this organization and you are not taking humanity out of leadership, because the people who are going to fall into those places are amazing people, amazing individuals that you are going to bring on board. So even if they already exist at your organization or you have to go out and hire them, you are capable of replacing that 20-year problematic employee with somebody who is 10 times better than her. You have that ability because you are in charge, because you can see the future vision, because you know this org structure. But the difference is that you're not looking at your team building as a fix-it project, but you're looking at it as an org chart, right? Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing that happens for my clients in the C-suite is this idea of emotional regulation, right? They're so disappointed and frustrated because their CEO is a freaking baby, right? And they're babysitting their CEO all the time. And they're like, how is this possible? How did this person have so much success and they're a mess? They're not doing any of the right rules. They're not following any of the structure. They're just going rogue. They're single-handedly throwing this company in the toilet. These are the conversations that I'm actually having with women in the C-suite. And it's frustrating, but you have to regulate your own emotions around it. And I'll tell clients all the time, like, what did you expect? And I think that it's really hard. And I want to acknowledge that, you can look at people who are lower levels than you, and it's like you almost have this expectation that they're not going to be that great. And then when somebody over delivers, it's like, oh, but I want you to look at your C-suite the exact same way, that it's basically a kindergarten playground and you're a part of that playground, right? And that's okay. It's okay that, everybody's slightly dysfunctional because you've spent the last 20 or 30 years of your career dealing with all kinds of emotional people. It's just that we get so caught up in the fact that they should have figured it out, or, why didn't I get promoted sooner? Because these people are worse than me. And I had to work on all my communication skills and make sure that I had stakeholder management and that I was over delivering on all of my projects. And they don't seem to over deliver on anything. But you need to understand that it never ends. This is part of the corporate structure. But what you can do is you can lean in and start to see it as sort of the playground culture that it is. And a lot of my conversations with women like you are about how to modify our communication and our strategies per person, just like you would for your team. So you know that one person on your team is motivated differently than another person. And so you start to look at your C-suite that same way, as sort of like, how do I motivate them? How do I include them? It's making me laugh because you actually have to think about your CEO, like, how do I include them? Like sometimes you might need to be willing to write the entire board presentation for your CEO and then sell your CEO on that board presentation. But the good news is that even if the CEO took full credit, quote unquote, for your work, you're already in the C-suite. You have that seat, that voice at the table. So whoever takes the credit, it doesn't necessarily matter as much as it did when you were climbing the ladder and nobody cared about you or nobody knew that you were as smart as you were. When you can start to look and expect and anticipate this sort of dysfunctional personalities that are happening in the C-suite ahead of time, now you can work within them. 99% of my clients are smarter than their bosses. That includes the CEO, right? If you're in the C-suite, you're probably smarter than the CEO. A lot of my clients also don't want to be CEOs. That's a completely different skill set, a completely different operational pattern. It's a completely different job. What they want is to be making an impact at the highest level that is meaningful to them. When you can begin to look at even those top highest paid executives as being slightly dysfunctional, you are going to have a leg up because now you can work within it. You can be that emotional regulator for everybody. It starts with yourself in being able to notice and not have these expectations that they've figured it all out. So even if you're at the senior director or VP level, you can be looking at those higher level executives and not to be jaded about it, but begin questioning because ultimately, at the end of the day, they're human beings as well. And you can have just normal, everyday conversations with them. You can help them with thinking through how they're going to grow and scale the company. You can ask them good questions that get them to think bigger. They don't have all the answers by far. No matter what level you're in, begin to practice managing up, coaching up, including yourself in those higher level conversations, because I guarantee you have something to bring to the table. And the last thing that I think is really difficult for women once they get into that C suite is that a lot of them have climbed the corporate ladder through their subject matter expertise. So we can talk about getting yourself out of the weeds, being able to be a little bit more high level, being able to zoom out, all of those great things, build your team so that you can focus on what's more important. That's one piece of it. But what I really mean is on the communication side. So we've heard a lot of executive leaders talk in sort of a fluffy way, or they can't really walk the talk or back things up, quote unquote. And so what you'll tend to do is get so enamored on the details and the facts of what it is that you're working on that you're not willing to inspire, to motivate. And when you get into that C-suite level role, it is your job to motivate not just a single individual, but the organization as a whole. And you do this in different ways. You do this through your understanding of your own leadership style, how you communicate about yourself, what your skills are, what you're good at. It all has to be in that higher level way, being able to kind of broaden it, tie in what you're good at as being like, it is amazing that both my skill set and the organizational needs come together at this single moment in time, and I am going to help save this company. Like being willing to own that, to say that, to communicate that to your team. When you hear the C-suite speak like, Braveheart on the hill, it is not by circumstance, right? It's how organizations are set up, and you can begin to practice that. I always challenge my clients to speak to the bigger why their work matters. Again, you can begin to do this at the director level, VP level, wherever you're at. When you have a one-on-one with your boss, talk about why that project that you're working on matters to the organization. Give the bigger picture. Tie things in to what matters to them, not just your success on that individual project. And then once you get to the C-suite, you begin to speak in this sort of like TED Talk style, whatever that might be to you, way. Because when you're presenting to the board, they don't obviously want to hear all of the details. They don't want to get into the weeds, but they do need to get enough information to make sure and to trust you that you're on the right track. So you have to know what matters to each one of them and speak to that. So that's true motivational, inspirational behavior in your communication. And so when you can begin to embrace that and begin to share that and say, okay, it does sound a little cheesy, but what it does is it begins to set you up as this trusted executive leader who is going to get approval on your complete reorg chart, who is going to get continuously included in those conversations, who's going to get your projects or your budgets approved, who's going to be able to push whatever agenda you might personally have through, right? And these skills carry over, even if you're at the absolute perfect organization. Everybody is so functional. Everybody is like emotionally regulated. Kind of makes me laugh. It's like, I don't even know if that exists. I mean, we live in a world with other people, right? And so there's always going to be a personal agenda, a personal motivation. Heck, you have a personal agenda, a personal motivation. But if you have that desire to have that level of freedom that I talked about at the beginning of today's episode, to have that space to both be good at your job, to be making those impacts at that highest level, and also have space, like brain power to have your own projects, have brain power to take a Friday off, have brain power to create no meeting Tuesdays, have brain power to change some of the benefits available to the employees, to have the brain power to be able to mentor other women. I have clients who are starting their own nonprofit organizations. They're being able to create their own initiatives and give back to the world in a much, much bigger way. Start to think right now, like if I was in the C-suite and I was able to do this, would I be able to do both of them? And the truth is that if you start to zoom out and you start to think of your team as an organizational structure and how is it lifting the organization, lifting other people up, if you begin to realize that, hey, this is all just a game of like kindergarten playground rules, and I'm going to start to play by some of those rules and see through some of the nonsense that's happening at this organization versus like make it mean something about me and my ability and have create more friction and tension between you and some of your peers who, quite frankly, you're smarter than them, and start to act that way. And if you're able to communicate in that visionary Braveheart style way, in that like, hey guys, this project matters, you know, this is how we're changing the world. Figure out what those things are and then figure out how to communicate your skill set and how you're going to lead them and continue to carry this organization. When you can begin to do that, it is so fun. It is so much more fun to be you. It is so much more fun to be in your job, to be at the top, to be making that difference and that impact that you're making. And then that way you also have the freedom to go out and do whatever the heck you want. It's like an early retirement plan to be able to say, hey, I love my job. I love the work that I'm doing. I am getting paid ridiculously well. And I'm actually helping so many people along the way. That's what I want for you. Now, let's like continue to use this podcast, to continue to use my work to break down the hows of that. What is it that actually looks like? What is it that I actually say? How do I actually manage my emotions around this kindergarten playground? That's the work. But knowing what it is that we're working on or working towards is the first part of the process. Thank you all. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Women Changing Leadership with Stacy Mayer. If you enjoyed this episode, you are absolutely going to love and benefit from the work that we're doing inside of the Women's Leadership Accelerator. This month-to-month membership program is unlike anything else in the market. We are single-handedly flipping the unemployment rates on their head. It is the only place on the internet where you can actually get yourself not only a job offer, but one that has a higher salary, a higher title, and more recognition and influence than you ever could have imagined in your career. Inside the Women's Leadership Accelerator, we are getting women promoted. We are getting them multiple higher level job offers. And I want that to happen for you. Join us in this one-of-a-kind program. You're going to get coaching directly from me, my executive mentors who are also hiring managers who are doing the work, who have worked with me personally for the past 3 to 5 years. We are here inside of this accelerator program to work with you personally to begin to elevate your leadership to that next level. This is exactly what you have been looking for, and I am here to deliver it to you. Best thing, it's month to month. So you can come in, join us, get access to all of my training materials, my weekly live interactive calls, and you can begin to bring your friends into this community. It is the most corporate badass community on the market. I can't wait to see you in there. Go to authenticallypowerfulwomen.com. We are changing the face of the leadership table, one promotion at a time. I can't wait to see you there.